Hello, everyone, and welcome to another in a series of interviews with prominent people in the improv world. I'm Bob Baker. I'm on the board of Compass Improv, and my guest tonight, oh my God, I'm so excited. There she is right there. It's Laura Hall, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi,
Hi, Laura.
everybody. Hi,
How are
Bob.
you?
I'm great. I'm really good.
Awesome, awesome. It's so great to see you, and we're gonna try to pack a lot of excitement into this hour that we have together. And so, of course, I think many people know you through your many years of working with a little show called "Whose Line Is It Anyway?" And that's the thing that's probably catapulted you into the public eye. That's safe to say, is it not?
Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and a lot of people speak of it as if it was a thing of the past, but it's actually not, right? It's still an
We're in our,
ongoing show, right?
yes, we just started our 18th season.
Oh my God,
So,
18th.
yeah, it was 9 years on ABC. Then we had like 5 years off, and then 9 years now on the CW. But we're like in the witness protection program on the CW
Yeah.
because they do not advertise it. So a lot of people don't realize that it's still going on.
Wow. So now it's 9 years in each version of it. And so
Yeah.
and I guess it's the version that a lot of people are familiar with, and younger people say, "Oh, I used to watch it with my parents," which really makes me feel good. But but there
I
was
know.
so 9 years when Drew Carey hosted it. And when did the American version of that start? Was it 99 or 2000 ish around there?
It would have been 19. It would have been 98.
Oh, really? When the
Yes.
American? Okay,
Yeah, when we did these little hybrid ones, we did a small season of hybrid ones,
right.
and then with that had actually um, the British host, and then we started the full on American ones with Drew because I was pregnant and my daughter was born in '99,
Oh wow! So you
February of
definitely remember
'99.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
So because yeah, it was a show in the UK for a number of years. There was that transition year. Then Drew took over, and 9 years, then 5 years off. Back in the CW for another nine years. That's amazing, and so that's what people mostly know you from, just because of the public visibility. But that I know that's just like the tip of the iceberg as far as your improv experience. And so, could you mind us sharing like some of the other stuff that you've done over the years, different groups you've played with, and so on?
Oh, improv wise?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I got my start at Second City in Chicago, and
Hmm.
but then I also was really active at the Annoyance Theater. And we were using improv like to write musicals and stuff, which was really interesting to use it in that way. I worked at IO West, comedy sports, theater sports. I've sort of done a little bit of everything.
Every
And
Yeah, like every
yeah,
prominent group, I think you've done at least something with at some point or another. And and
yeah.
internationally, you performed. I know for a while there before the pandemic, you there was a Who's Line show in the UK, and I believe that it wasn't the Royal Albert Hall, one of the more recent
Yes,
ones that made famous in the Beatles song, right? No,
exactly,
no, they,
exactly. Now they know.
well,
Now I know how many holes it takes to fill.
to fill
So.
the Albert Hall, and I happen to know you also played Carnegie Hall at one point.
Yes,
So
yes. I know. It's kind of a shocker. And I feel like such a faker. You know, like when we played Carnegie Hall, we did an improvised opera, a short improvised opera, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like Pavarotti sang here." You know, Rachmaninoff played the very same piano that I was playing, and
oh
I'm
my
like
God,
making up an opera.
wow! And you were just making stuff up there.
Yep. Yep.
That's amazing. And then I know, yeah, and then you also you and your husband Rick have a band. You've done, yeah. What's the name of look plug for the band there?
Well, now we used to have a band called the Sweet Potatoes, which you may be
Oh,
thinking of, but that band is split up.
oh, I didn't know that.
We just started doing we did our first like sort of singer-songwriter concert just a few weeks ago. So right as the band split up, then the pandemic. So I've been home writing basically.
Wow. And so that's really awesome. So if we, I just want to let people know in a little bit of if I seem to have a familiarity with your history, I just want to quickly get that out of the way. But you and I met. I can't believe it's been this long, but it was in 2014, which was 7 years ago. That's just crazy.
Oh,
And it was
wow.
actually this month. You and your husband Rick were in St. Louis to do a musical improv workshop during the Compass Improv Festival
Festival.
of
Yeah.
that year. And I know you'd been to St. Louis prior to that, but that was like the year that I really got back immersed into the improv community here after kind of years of being away from it. And so I saw that you were coming, and I said, "Oh my God, I've been watching this show for years. I love, so I got to go to and sign up." And I know I was a total fanboy. I mean, I remember just being like so excited to meet you and Rick. And the first time that I walked into this venue, a prominent venue in St. Louis called the Improv Shop, it was the old location on Euclid. Was the night that we, after that class on a Saturday afternoon, we went there to do the showcase, which is often how you do that. You do a workshop, and then there's a showcase with the students, right?
Right, right. It's either that night or at the end of the weekend if it's an intensive, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. And so that was really exciting for me to be up on stage, looking down, seeing you play piano, and I was in the very first thing that you brought up with Irish drinking song was I remember it distinctly because I was very
Gosh.
nervous and excited all rolled into one. And so that was like a great introduction. And then several months later, I reached out to you to invite you to be a guest on one of my podcasts called The Creative Entrepreneurs, probably like around August or September of 2015. You were gracious enough to agree to do that. Had a great conversation. And then it was at the end of that, after that recording, we started chatting, and somehow that led to us writing a book together.
Yes, it did. I know. Isn't life funny?
It is. So we started working on that late.
Yapping to
Oh,
death.
there it is right
Oh,
now.
there's the book.
The improv comedy musician, the ultimate guide to playing music with an improv group. And we worked on that start late 2015, and then it came out in the summer, I guess, of 2016. And I can't believe that was 5 years ago. Man,
I
oh man,
know.
that is.
Well, and the pandemic sort of put a black hole in the middle of time too. So you know what I mean?
It's a,
Like
has it created a rip in the space-time continuum
exactly.
or something? So in working on that project took together, yeah, I learned a lot about your history as we crafted the chapters and all that. It was awesome that Colin Mockery wrote the foreword to the book. That was really
Mhm.
cool. In fact, he retweeted my little promo for this interview on Twitter today. So
Oh, he's a good man.
he is a good man, and so that's the backstory. I won't be talking. The rest of the focus is on you, but I just want to sort of get that out of the way if I seem to be overly familiar with your story. So
You're
speaking of
not
that,
stalking me.
is that yes, yes.
It's not that you've been stalking me. No.
Your husband put an end to that at some point. No, he's put his foot down. No, no, just joking. So I want to hit on, but I do want to give this a little taste of your background. I'm going to hit on some of the highlights as I recall them or what stood out to me, and then we're going to talk about the nitty gritty of musical improv, get into some of the mechanics of it, and then those of you watching on Facebook, especially if you're on the Compass, you're watching it on the Compass Improv page. You can start doing that now. Actually, we're going to open it up for questions, but you can start posting your questions for Laura. And in the second half, we're going to get to those. And so, yeah, here's your opportunity to communicate directly. Anything you've been dying to know about musical improv or Whose Line or any of her other wide range of experiences. So what I know about you, Laura, is that you grew up in the Chicago area. I think were you a music major in college? Is that right?
Well,
Yeah.
I kind of danced around it because I didn't, like many people, I was like, I don't have enough confidence in myself. Is this a
Okay.
legitimate way to make a living? But I did eventually finally settle and say, this is just what I want to do. So,
Cool. And you even well, I remember. I think there was a photo in the book with you like in an '80s new wave band or something. Didn't you played in
oh
bands
yeah,
back then?
yeah.
That's awesome. So here's the thing. You got so definitely like a lot of improvisers, you got your start at the Second City in Chicago, but your first way of being involved with that venue was not as a performer. How did you get involved with
Well,
Second City? Yeah.
yes. First, I was a coat check girl. Right. There's a very Midwestern job, right? A coat check girl. But I
Right.
was still in college, so it was perfect because I could study during the show, right? You're busy at the beginning and end of the show, right? And then I could
Right.
study during the show. And then I got promoted to a waitress. And that was when I really got the bug because I was in the room during the shows, and and for me it was like, oh, it's a college gig and you make good money, but
Right.
I ended up getting really hooked in.
So you didn't like take that job, the coat check and the being the server, thinking it was a stepping stone to get on stage. You did that didn't even occur to you after till after you were working there, right?
Exactly. I didn't see it like a career path or anything. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to do music, but it just hadn't really occurred to me.
But at some point, somebody either you inquired or somebody said, "Hey, you want to play in these things?" Or how did that? Yeah, that.
That's pretty much, that was about as official as it was. I would play sometimes. Those were the days when you could drink for free after work when you
Oh,
were
okay.
there. Really bad business model, But but so there was a lot of hanging out.
Mhm.
We would hang out and have a beer, and then oftentimes I'd play the piano, and people would sing, or we'd jam or whatever. So they knew played, and they knew I kind of knew the world of it from being around as a waitress. So they were like, "Hey, want to go on the road?" And that was basically my training.
Wow. So you went into a touring company, right?
Yes,
And that's where I know that's where you met your husband, Rick. He was part of that touring company in the sweaty van or whatever
yes,
on
exactly.
those road.
Not stinky van.
That's what everybody does to pay their dues. Then you come back and I don't know. I guess you work your way up to the main stage or something
Well,
at
I
Second
never,
City.
I never got to the main stage. I played in the ETC, partly because the musicians there stick around for a long time. Fred was there. Fred Cass was the first musician there.
Mhm.
He was there for 30 years,
Right,
25 years. And then Ruby Streak was the second one. She ended up being there almost that long. So it wasn't like, the actors cycled through a lot quicker
right.
and the musicians. So I made it up to ETC, which was the second stage, and I opened a show with them.
Oh, cool, cool. Now I'm going to jump ahead. I know there was somebody in that touring company. I think his name was Ron, who was actually responsible for you to get an audition for Whose Line. Is that my memory serve?
Yes, good job, Bob. It's Ron West, who is still doing all sorts of interesting theater and improv stuff, But we toured together at Second City. He had done the British version of Whose Line a few times. You know how they'd
Okay.
have the American guests.
Yeah.
And so when they came to the States, they hired him as a producer and to help him, especially to help them find talent. So he would help bring people in for auditions and for the musician auditions as well.
And I remember because there's a funny story in the book where you talk about your audition for Whose Line was in a hotel room, and I think was Wayne Brady also part of
It
that?
was Wayne Brady, Brad Sherwood, and then the producer, Dan Patterson, and maybe one other guy there. And I'm like, I'm alone in a hotel room with four strange men.
Yeah, in L.A. Yeah,
Yeah, having an audition.
right.
I'm like, wow, this is a little weird, but it ended up being fine.
A
Yeah,
pretty good deal, yeah.
yeah.
And then so that's from those humble beginnings. Then the show launched, and I guess yeah. And Drew, I remember in those years, Drew really he always recognized you and said, "Laurel on the piano," and there was a lot of the camera would cut over to you and your smiling face and all that beaming over there. And did you pretty quickly get like the recognition, I guess, after those years in those years, or I guess the
Well,
focus was on Colin and Wayne
right.
and Ryan, but you were a staple part of the show too.
Yeah. Actually, I'm sort of like, this sounds weird to say, but I'm sort of the perfect amount of famous because I'm not really famous. Like I don't get stopped at the grocery store,
Right,
right? But like if I'm at an improv festival, people know who I am. Does
right.
that make sense? So
It does, yeah.
if I'm in an improv context, people go, "Oh, you're Laura Hall." But I don't get like, it's not like touring with Drew Carey, who would get mobbed at restaurants. And I was like, "Oh, I'm kind of glad I'm not that
Yeah,
famous, to tell you the
it's a
truth.
blessing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Cool. So you're semi-famous, but it's led to a lot of opportunities, or
Exactly.
I'm
Exactly.
I'm sure. All right, cool. So in addition to the book, which we've mentioned, I know, and we'll come back. We'll give you I'll give you the opportunity to talk about this later too. But you also launched a new course related to this called "The Musician's Guide to Improv Comedy." You want to just tell me a little bit
Yes.
about that?
So that was actually, it was really inspired by the book. And because I would get emails from people saying, "Oh, I wish there were like examples that we could hear." You know what I mean? That like I love the book, I wish there was more kind of
Mhm.
thing, which was great, great feedback to get. And I had thought about doing something like that, but I never felt like I had time. And then the pandemic came. So it was my little pandemic project, and I actually, there was a lot to learn tech wise because I did all of it. I was the camera woman, the writer,
Wow.
I was hair and makeup, I was craft services, I was everything.
Right.
Um, but I really enjoyed doing it. And it felt like it's like the thing that happened when we wrote the book of like really distilling down what I've learned from all these years of doing this. I've been doing it a really long time and in a lot of different contexts.
Yeah. Because when you
Um,
don't have, when you teach something, you learn to clarify it and communicate it because you've just been doing it organically yourself and probably not, and then suddenly having to communicate that, start at a basic level, work your way up, it really makes you think.
yeah,
Yeah.
it does. It makes you analyze it. The other inspiration for it was that, like, because Rick and I tour a lot and we teach, and we usually teach the singing side of improv, right? So, like the workshop you took, Bob.
Right.
But a lot of times people say like, "Oh, I wish we had a musician. We love doing this, but we don't have a musician, or we have someone who's interested in doing it, but we don't know how to explain to them how to do it."
Right.
So it's partly for that because like I was so lucky that I came up in Chicago and there was improv all around me. So I could like learn by osmosis. But if you're in an improv group in Rolla, Missouri, you probably don't wouldn't have another musician to learn from. So
Yeah.
that was the other impetus for it.
Because there's a whole other set of skills. Just being a good piano player or guitar player or whatever does not make you a good improvise or one to support an improv group. There's a whole set of skills you have to learn,
Yes.
to be good at that. And talk about a niche audience. So I always like to talk about how so if you just take the population in general, there's like a small percentage of people that are even interested in doing improv, I mean, the acting part or whatever, because they're just intimidated by this whole making it up on the spot in front of an audience, thing. And so, but you got this percentage of people who like to take the improv classes and perform. But of them, there's an even smaller subset of those people who are willing to take on musical improv. Even experienced improvisers on the acting side of it don't want to touch. They're like, "Oh, I can't sing or whatever." And then so you got that group, and then to find the musicians who accompany them, there's a subset of that subset. So it's really a niche audience, but it's one that there's not a whole lot of education out there on it. Yeah,
Exactly. There's just
yeah,
really not, there's not, I mean, like there's our book. I think
yeah,
there's one other book, and that's kind of it,
yeah.
Again, unless you're going to like an improv festival, like, at Chicago Improv Festival, they would have classes for musicians. And I've
Mhm.
taught a few times at festivals, but that too, not everyone can afford to go to a festival, to be able to have that kind of experience. But yeah, it is. I'm the niche within the niche.
Within the niche. But I remember when we were promoting the book, and I'm sure it's the same way with your new course. Even though the ideal, like the target audience, is the actual musician themselves. Actually, I think it's really helpful for anyone who's working in a musical improv to know how to work with, and often the piano player is also called the music director, the MD. Is that
Yeah.
true? And they're usually, yeah, they so they have to wear They're in charge of the whole musical aspect of it. And so knowing what they're up against and knowing how to work with them as a singer is very
Mhm.
helpful. Or if you organize an improv group or improv show, knowing that balance and the role that the musician plays really is really helpful.
Yeah, because like a lot of times I find like a director or a coach for a team, they don't know how to talk to the musician either. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like, the musician's trying to learn and get better at it, and they're getting, like, well, that was good. That wasn't good.
Mhm.
It's like, you need a little more concrete direction to be able to improve at it.
Yeah. And
And
I remember some of the, and I learned so much just, just writing this with you, um, and just being able to, to have you clarify some of your knowledge. But I know one of the things that I learned, in when we wrote the book together was the role. So a musician, and similar, there are a lot of similarities between an improv player and the role of a musician. You're balancing this back and forth between leading and following.
Mhm.
Um, so talk about a little bit about that. Yeah, what's the role of the musician if you can boil it down into a nutshell?
Yeah.
Just
But it is some of the following the follower idea that we're leading and following at the same time.
Mhm,
The best advice I got as when I was starting out was from Fred Kaz, who did kind of invent how music works with improv at
mhm,
Second City. I mean, he's the guru. But he said, if there's six improvisers on stage, you're the seventh improviser.
mhm.
So you really are shaping and have a voice just like the actors do. It's just in a different way. Sometimes what we're doing is kind of subliminal. We're underscoring, and it's
Yeah.
kind of speaking to the emotion of the scene, but not in a conscious way or a verbal way. I think that's partly why music can be so effective. Underscore can be. But
Mhm,
also, then when we're improvising a song, we are both leading and following. We're figuring out the form together. We're figuring out where it goes together, and it takes a lot of trust in yourself and in your other players. So it really is, it's more than it, it, it's
mhm.
more than like, oh, I'm just playing piano and then they'll just follow me.
Yeah.
You know what
Not
I
at
mean?
all. It's not like
It's
being in a
yeah,
in a cover band or whatever where you're just playing the hits or whatever.
yeah, exactly,
Unless you're
exactly.
doing the game greatest hits, then that's another thing. But so underscoring, just to clarify, is like the soundtrack in a movie. It's like you said, it's subliminal almost, and you're purposely not wanting to stand out as the musician because you're just setting the tone. The focus is on the actors or what's going on, and you're just like supporting it with an emotional undertone, underscoring, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then when it comes to the singing part of it, another thing that I still share people. And I basically say there's loosely categorized. There's three types of singing songs. And on one end, it's the highly structured ones. You want to talk a little bit about that, and the common ones from Whose Line is like Irish Drinking Song, Hoedown, which I know the
Right.
cast loves to do, right? um, so on one end, yeah, it's the highly structured one, and what's unique about those types of the highly structured ones?
Yeah. And I do just want to say one more thing about underscoring.
Oh,
I
sure.
don't get to underscore on Whose Line,
Oh,
right?
right.
So you don't hear examples of that. But in a live improv show, underscore is a huge part of the show. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Yeah, good point.
Okay, so the super structured games like a hoedown or an Irish drinking song, those games are rhyming first, right? Those are rhyming games. The rhyming is top priority for the actor. And the structure is already preset. So a lot of times musicians who are starting out like those games
Mm,
because we know what the music it sounds like. We know how long it goes, we know whose turn is when. We know all these elements going in. Um, so people who are strong rhymers and oftentimes beginner musicians really like those structured games. Um, And, you know, people who are really good rhymers can get a lot of mileage out of a game like Irish Drinking Song.
Right. And the thing I always point out too is it takes a lot of the weight off of having to improvise because the chord structure is already set. You know, you play the same chords in the same key, the same order with hoedown every time you play. An Irish Drinking
Right.
Song, the same way. The melody that the singers sing is the same every every time.
Right.
The rhyming structure, as far as like the AABB or whatever, is the same. So the only thing that they have to worry is as soon as they know the suggestion, then they just have to come up with the lyrics and the rhymes. So they're just into an existing structure, right?
Right, exactly. You're sort of pouring it into an existing structure. That's a
And
pretty
I also realized it until I didn't realize it until you pointed out that those games tend to be more presentational than
Mhm.
scenic, right? It's like you're breaking the fourth wall and delivering it to the audience, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You get a suggestion and away you go.
Yeah.
Right.
And then let's talk about, well, then I know there's a middle ground. So that's the highly, and then let's go to the other side, the totally open and organic, unless you want to talk about the middle one. There's sort of an in between one where there's semi structure with a lot
Yeah.
of,
I'll
so
talk
what,
about organic next, and then we'll talk about that. So
all right.
organic improvised songs are more the kind of if you're doing, say, a herald, or even if you're doing a scene where the scene is growing and then the song grows out of the scene. So those are like character driven,
Mhm.
right? And in that situation, there's a lot fewer, there are actually no known factors. We don't know what the chord progression is going to be, what the rhythm is, what the melody is. We don't know what rhyme scheme, how much or how little we're going to rhyme. All of that we're figuring out together,
Mhm.
right? But what a lot of people discover is that if they really are invested in the character and they create a scene that has characters with strong wants and strong needs and strong relationships, then it's easy to sing about because you're singing about what you've already created in the scene.
And you're also singing what you would normally be speaking in a non-musical scene, right?
Right,
Kind of,
in a
sort of.
way, right, in a way you are, but you can be even more like about your emotions and you can be more poetic. You
Yeah.
can be, you know what I mean? Like there's more variety in a way than what we typically do in a spoken scene. And oh shoot, I had one more thought. Went right out of my head.
That's okay.
But in that case also rhyming is not the top priority.
Right. You have the
Right,
option. You can rhyme if you want or not, right?
right,
Or just
right, exactly.
because that's probably, and it's interesting because I've given a lot of classes locally here in St. Louis on with musical improv, and while some people do like the structure, there's some people that are intimidated by the rhyming and they just prefer the free form, sing whatever comes out, um,
Exactly.
and it's weird that different people vibe with different approaches.
Hmm.
And so I guess that's another thing as a musical director, or you sort of, if you know your cast members' strengths and weaknesses, you can cater to them as the musician. Is that true? Too?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you know, if we were doing a short form show, I might, you know, you might like being in a structured game, like, you know, like you might say, "Oh yeah, I want to do a hoedown. I like those structured games."
Mhm.
Whereas, like my husband Rick would prefer to do something scenic that grows into a song.
Right, right. And so those are the extremes. Highly structured, totally wide open, organic, anything goes. We have no idea where we're going. And then what about in the middle there? There's like
So
hybrid, right?
right. In the middle are games like That Sounds Like a Song or Bartender or even Greatest Hits, where they tend to have several shorter songs in them. And so they have some structure, but they're open-ended in other ways. So like with That Sounds Like a Song, for example, the caller sets up the song and we know, oh, if I had the last line of dialogue, now I'm going to start that song. But after that, it's basically an organic song.
Right. Like in bartender, the structure is that the patron's going to come in, he's going to sing about what his woes are. The bartender's going to have a response. There might be a little back and forth. And so that's the
Mhm.
structure of it, but the chord progression, the melody, that's all pretty much open to what happens in the moment, right?
Exactly. So they
Yeah,
really are, in a way, more like organic songs in
yeah,
that
yeah.
the music isn't preset. It's more sort of the structure within the scene. Same with greatest hits, right? You you get, here's the suggestion, here's the style, but you still don't know what the music is going to be when it comes.
Exactly, exactly. So some questions are coming in here. So let's pop in here, and I'm going to have some other stuff I'm sure to ask you too. But so Janet, known as Aunt Janet, here, who happens to be, I know you know who Mike Newman is. That's his actual aunt. But
Oh,
she wants to know, when do you and Rick have any plans to return to St. Louis anytime soon? Is what-
well, we have really just started doing some live teaching and performing really like in the last month or so. Um, and so, but it's been so hard to plan stuff because it was like, oh, things are opening up. Now they're closing back up.
Right.
And so we're kind of, and then I'm working on a musical right now that's going to take me through the end of the year, basically. So, and then Whose Line might tape, knock on wood,
Yeah.
might tape again in January and February. So the short answer is we don't have any plans, but hopefully by spring
Yeah.
things will have opened up, and then all these other projects will be.
And then you and Rick do fly into the St. Louis area every so often because I guess his family still is in Illinois, an
Yeah.
hour away, and so you visit them. And I know the times that we've done some workshops together over the years was kind of coordinated with those trips to the area, but not every time you come in, are you? Yeah. You want to spend time with your family and chill out instead of doing a workshop. But so
But
maybe when
we're
things get better, yeah.
Yes, we really are hoping when things open up again in a more solid way. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
that we'll really be able to make plans again, just like life used to be.
That's right. Oh my God.
Remember that?
I can't wait for those to come back. So Doug asks. So here's his question: what was your favorite performer or team to play with? What made them the most fun to play with? So, if you don't want to have like a favorite, just like maybe some fun team, maybe a fun form, a fun experience with a particular team
Um,
or group.
I really like playing with, there's a group here in LA called Opening Night, the Improvised Musical.
Mm.
And they do an hour-long improvised musical based on one suggestion. And they are very, I really enjoy playing with them. I sit in with them sometimes. I'm not their regular player, but when I sit in with them, I always have such a great time. They're really talented singers, but they're also really good with sort of building a structure. You know what I mean? Building that
Hmm.
long form structure. And Jonathan Mangum from Whose Line is in the group
Oh
too.
yeah, yeah.
So sometimes, and I always love playing with Jonathan.
So I'm curious. Yeah, so that is very long formish where you just get the one suggestion at the beginning and then you go for an hour. So it's which is very different than short form where you're
Right,
constantly
right.
getting suggestions. But I'm curious in a game in that particular group, is there any kind of like loose framework that you follow? Like you follow like the I don't know the hero's journey or the classic like musical structure or whatever in that, or is it totally wide open or?
Well, it probably it does. I mean, they get a protagonist and an antagonist. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it does follow sort of a classic structure in that regard. Um, but it's pretty wide open
Okay.
besides that. They don't structure it like, oh, you two do the first scene, you two do the second. It's like all that happens. But we do try and establish a protagonist early on. We try and have, the protagonist almost always sings some sort of I want or I wish song, which sort of establishes the goal, the journey. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So there are those kinds of things that are classic story building. But the
Yeah.
reason they're classic is because they work so well. You know what I mean? Like,
So the players just sort of instinctively know to include those things. There's always a goal. There's always an obstacle, right?
exactly, exactly.
And hopefully at the end, either there's a happy ending or a weird ending.
Right. hopefully things line up at the end and you're not just going, oh, now we're done.
but not always. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that's that's cool. Let's see. So I got a couple things here. So Dave LeMay earlier here. This might be really specific, but maybe you can have it more general. Any tips on? He says any tips on finding a musical improv group? He says in the DC area or anywhere else. I'm not sure if that's a question that you can answer. Or is there a
Yeah.
way to seek out? Well, again, we're in pandemic times, but as we come out of
Right.
this, how does
Right.
one seek out a musical improv group or
Well, I mean,
opportunities?
I don't know the DC area specifically, so I wouldn't be able to help with that. But you can go online and just Google like improv groups in your area. And sometimes you just need to like if there's an improv theater or an improv group and you approach them and say, you know, I'm interested in doing musical improv, you may find that there are people who are like, oh yeah, we've always wanted to try that,
Yeah.
you know, because there is a real growing interest in musical improv. It's really grown quite a bit.
Yay.
Um, yeah, the other thing is you can do stuff online. There's lots of people online, and there's like Facebook groups. Like there's one, I'm gonna forget the name, but
Isn't
it's
the
like,
musical improv worldwide or something like
yes,
that? And then we're
yes,
both part of that. Yeah. And
right,
that's people from all, well, as the name implies, people from all over the country and the world. And you could probably join that group and then ask if about specific
right,
cities, right?
right. Just say who's doing something interesting in DC, you know, and you might find people again, people who are really interested like you,
Mhm.
and just you know, you just have to look for them, but you can find them online, and there are people teaching musical improv online. There's, you know, there's all sorts of stuff still happening online.
Yeah. And then meetup.com is always a good one.
Yeah.
Um, those are probably the best places. So I hope that helps there, Dave. And see here. Oh, Scott Randall is a friend of mine who's a guitar player here in St. Louis. He goes, what advice do you have for guitarists or other instrumentalists for getting involved with improv groups? So I guess non-piano players.
Right, right. Which you do, Bob,
I
right?
don't,
You
I don't
play
play the
guitar.
piano, so yeah, I've always used the guitar. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it functions the same way. Certainly, especially with improvising songs, the guitar functions the same way the piano does.
Mhm.
I do feel like, and maybe this is my personal bias, but I do feel like piano is better for underscoring
Right.
than guitar.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible. And you know, we worked with a group in Copenhagen who had two guitar players, and they did a fantastic job. And the same basic premises are true. You know, the following the follower, the you know, the connection with the singers and stuff. So like everything that applies to what I do can apply to guitar. It is, like I said, it is different to do the underscoring though.
Yeah, when you're using electronic keyboard, you can have more of a variety of sounds too. I know,
Right.
unless you're using pedals or something on a guitar, but yeah, I do my best to underscore, just play lightly and try to fit the
Hmm.
mood of the song. You know, play minor keys or whatever if it's more melancholy, and play the major
Right.
chords if it needs to be brighter or whatever. Just kind of the standard things, but um, and then just yeah, you're just like it's just like the best skill you can learn in improv of any kind is listening, and you really have to be a good listener to be a musician supporting a group. You know,
Yeah.
listening to what's going on stage and supporting it. So yeah, Scott, I can tell you firsthand that I know that it's possible. Let's see here. So Katie, a friend of mine who actually she was at the last time you were in St. Louis out at the Chester out at the mall. I remember she met you that night. She goes, "Hi, Bob and Laura, great to see you. How did you start learning the piano? What age? What was it like? Oh, so those are that's the first question is, yeah, the kind of what age did you start? And then what's it like working with Wayne? That's the second question. Wayne Brady, I'm sure. Yeah. So to the first one if you want.
Okay, so I started piano lessons when I was like 8 or 9 and
Mhm.
did traditional piano lessons. And then I wanted to be like a songwriter. Like once I got to like middle school and high school, I wanted to be a songwriter. And so then I taught myself to play by ear and stuff. And so that was the start of where then that opened me up in a way to be able to do improv. Do you know what I mean? Because I
Yeah,
had the
yeah.
journey. So I can read and I can do improv or play by ear and do improv. Working with Wayne is remarkable because Wayne is he's kind of like a savant. I mean, he has three things. One is that he's an incredible rhymer,
Yeah.
right? So and that's sort of I think the savant part. That like the rhymes just like tick 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 in his head. And then he picks and chooses the ones he wants, as opposed to most of us who are like going, "Whoo, got through that," you know?
Just whatever comes up. You're yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's amazing that fast that brain has got to be so
yeah.
fast.
Yes. And then he also, he has a fantastic voice and moves well and all that. I mean, he's done Broadway shows, you know what I mean? So he's
Yeah.
a really fantastic musician. And then the third thing is that he studies like styles and stuff. So he takes the time to work on, what makes ragtime sound like ragtime, what makes Britney Spears sound like Britney Spears. Like he takes that time and does that work.
Mm.
So I admire his like natural talent, but then I also admire the work that he does.
The word, yeah, that doesn't just happen completely naturally.
Right, right,
He's put a lot of time into that. Uh,
right.
let's see here. What's the so Janet again wants to know: is there anyone? This is interesting. Is there anyone you'd really like to do improv with? So I'm gonna make this a two-part question. Is there anyone you have not done improv with that you still would love to do improv with? And then maybe who were and then a personal question related to that is, who have you performed with where you were like a little starstruck, like you're like, oh my god, I get to play. The same way that I was like thrilled to play with you that first time. I'm sure. Have you performed with people you got? Oh my god, I can't believe I'm performing with so and so. I remember one story that I from the book that I, if you don't mention it, I will. But so so any of those questions there, threw a lot at
Um,
you.
I'd love to improvise with Tina Fey, and I don't
Oh,
know if she does musical improv specifically, but everybody who from Second City, everybody says what a gracious, fantastic improviser she is, and
fabulous.
that she's really a great team player. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Which I love and adore. So I would probably put her on my list of like I'd love to improvise with
So
her.
on your bucket list or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
We,
Um, who was I starstruck by?
or just yeah, you were like
Or,
thrilled that you had an opportunity to perform with them.
um, well, Robin Williams was a big one.
Oh wow,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, he and I got to improvise with him on Whose Line, but also I did a couple of live event things with him, and that was very exciting. Speaking of a quick mind,
Yeah.
he's like going like sometimes it's like whoa slow down we can't keep up with you we can't you're like brrr. Yeah. um so he was really remarkable. She's not super famous, but she's a singer named Nicole Parker, and she was on Mad TV, and she was out of Second City, and then she also did Broadway. She was on
Oh
Wicked.
wow.
She was in Wicked. So she's a super fantastic singer and has a strong improv background. And when I improvised a show with her once, and I was like, oh my gosh. Another one is Stacy Smith. She's really remarkable. Like she does a one-woman improvised musical, a one-person improvised musical, and I
Wow.
was in awe of her talent.
That's amazing. What?
Yeah.
Didn't you tell the story about Robin Williams? I don't think it was on Whose Line. I think it was at some event or charity event or something where he like turned to you and said something or did something. Or I remember I had suddenly had a flashback of this story.
Yeah, it was a like variety show, and he was giving an award to Jonathan Winters, who was like his hero, and I was part of the house band, so we were just playing walk on and walk off for each act. We weren't performing with the various acts. We were like the house band. But when he came out and he was doing his thing, he started fooling around and doing a preacher character. And he knew that I did improv. And he turned around and said, let's do a little gospel. And I was like, oh, yeah. I was so excited. But when he turned back out to face the audience, I couldn't hear him. He wasn't in my monitor because we were never supposed to perform together. Do you know what I mean? We weren't
Right.
scheduled to do something together. So when he turned around to the audience and I was playing, I couldn't hear him at all. And so I had to improvise the song, like kind of based on his body language, which luckily he's a very physical performer. So I could kind of tell where he was going and
Wow.
just hope for the best. And yeah, it was pretty terrifying.
I bet. But you were the right person, I believe, to take on that challenge. And then there's real quickly. I happen to know that there was one time when Joe Walsh, the guitar player, came to your house, right? I,
Yeah,
I think you were a little kind of like, oh my God, Joe Walsh is here, right?
yeah. I was pretty starstruck playing with him too. Yeah, so he was friends with Drew, and we were going to do a gig in Vegas, and Drew said, "Hey, why don't you play with Laura and Linda?" And he like called and went, "I've never done improv before. I feel like I need to like have a little bit of a talk through." And so he came to my house, and we were in my studio in my garage. It was so surreal, you
I
know?
bet you that. Here's the guy that played in the Eagles,
Yeah,
Rocky Mountain Way,
yeah.
and you're teaching him.
Yeah,
And
right.
yeah,
And when we were doing the show, he was like, "You need to be the band leader. You need to be cueing me." And it felt so weird, like telling him what to do.
right.
But it also says to me that he knew enough to know he didn't know how to do it. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
Like,
he wasn't so cocky that he felt he did. Yeah, he knew he
yes,
needed training, and you were the person to turn to for that. So
yeah.
I think that's great. Um, let's see here. So Doug asked another question. What's the most? We got about another 15 minutes here, folks. So yeah, get your questions in our remaining time. What's the most surprising or unexpected thing you found from doing musical improv? Hmm. Surprising or unexpected thing? Or that's kind
Um,
of a wide open question
that
there.
is a wide open question. I would say from teaching musical improv, one of the things that surprises me is that every once in a while you'll have an actor who is not very experienced with improv, but they have a lot of musical background,
Mhm.
and that when they're doing a song, they are excellent improvisers, but when they're doing a scene, they don't know how to do that yet.
That's amazing. Yeah,
It's
because some
not it's not real common, but
no.
it happens once in a while, and I'll be like, "You are born for musical improv because it's your strongest improv you did today was when you were singing rather than when you were doing scenes or games."
That's amazing. Yeah, like I said earlier, most people that are good at the acting part are intimidated by music, but every now and then, yeah, I run across somebody who goes, "But I really much rather sing my lines." I'm going, "Oh, great, you're my kind of
Yeah,
person, and you're
exactly. Exactly.
that rare bird." So that is a great one, and I bet you, yeah, I know you've Rick have traveled and done many of these workshops around the world, and I bet you find some gems. Yeah, there's people that unassuming people, and then suddenly they're just belting it out and
Mhm. Yeah.
shine when when
Yeah,
they get a little
we just did a
training.
workshop in San Diego, and this young woman was like, "I just finished level 1." So she's pretty much a beginner.
Yeah,
She was fantastic at musical improv, and when we did the show that night, she completely kicked it out, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, this has made me so much more confident with my improv in general." And I'm like, "Yay, that's the goal."
oh, that's cool. So Mary Beth, who I know attends a lot of my Zoom classes, she's from California. She's so wonderful to meet you. Long Beach has a great school called Held Together. Scott Sagassier, Sagassier is our music director. Also, Penny Carter Lockhart. I don't know if these are people that you know. We're at a camp doing improv with you guys. Oh, so these are some people that maybe that attended
Oh,
your thing. She had a ball. Thank you both so much for your talents. I guess she's talking about you and Rick. Can you come to Long Beach or nearby someday?
Send me an email.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. Yeah,
So
Long Beach isn't that far from us.
you're actually because I remember when I reached out to you to invite you to be on my podcast after not only having met you once at the workshop. Yeah, I just went to your website, sent you an email, and you're. I mean, I don't want to bombard you with stuff, but you are accessible for people that want to bring you in or whatever.
Yeah, we're really open to, we've taught all sorts of different places all over the world.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, if you're serious about it, just go to my website. It's laurahall.com, and there's a contact me thing, and just send me an email and we'll talk about it. Absolutely. I think maybe your friends were at Camp Utopia, which I just did, was my first like big back to live teaching, and it was so much fun. It was really a great experience.
That's cool. Yeah, you said before we went live here, you said that some people were like weeping because they hadn't been around people in the community like that, right?
Yeah, it was such a big love fest, everyone just so happy to be in community together. I mean, so many people who do improv, they do it because they love the community. They love being part of this world. And for the most part, it's a good world, It's
Oh yeah.
like, yeah, and I think people were really missing that sense of community.
Um, so another question here from Doug about teaching. I know you kind of covered this a bit, but this is going to also be a nice segue into talking about your course again. Maybe there's an aspect of this you haven't talked about yet, but what's your favorite part of teaching? Was there something that you had to rethink after trying to teach, which I kind of touched on a little bit earlier, but anything you want to add to that? Favorite part of teaching and anything you learned as you taught more.
Yeah.
Mm, mm.
My very favorite part is how often people will start out like we do a little just, who are you? Why are you here? Kind of thing at the beginning of a workshop.
Mhm.
How very often people express fear,
Yeah.
anxiety, right? And then how very often they go, oh my gosh, that was super fun. It was not as scary as I thought it
Right.
was. It's not as overwhelming, and that makes me happy. That says we're doing a good job because we're helping people find that. But that, I think, is my very favorite part, is people who are like, I was scared out of my mind and it was super fun,
Yeah.
you know?
And I want to get your take on this too. I know another thing I discovered doing this, because I've been singing for a long time, so I'm kind of when you do something for a long time, you sort of take it for well, not take it for granted, but you're really close to that activity. And I realize that a lot of people have who have carry around these like emotional wounds. Like people told them either whether they were siblings or people that were joking or teachers who were not very supportive,
Mhm.
saying, Please, I'm going to pay you not to sing," or whatever. They jokingly
Right.
say stuff, and it sticks with people. And they have this. They tell themselves a story about, "I can't sing. I'm not musical," and they make it like part of their jokey thing. But you can tell it's like a deeply ingrained thing, and it's kind of neat to try to help people reframe that. You know,
Yes, absolutely. And you do run into people who have that and yeah, and it does become part of them because their second grade teacher said you have to stand in the back and sing quiet or whatever,
yeah,
and
just move your lips. We don't want to hear, don't want to
yeah,
hear you, and so that becomes part of their identity, right?
yeah.
Whether it's true or not. Yeah.
The huge plus about improv singing too is it is totally different than if you were like doing a concert singing, right? When you're improvising a song for an audience, they don't have the expectation like they do, like, oh, here's Celine Dion singing this
Yeah.
fabulous song. You know what I mean? You're making up a song, for crying out loud. And so the expectation is completely different, and they're way more forgiving. And if you stay committed to it, if you go a little out of tune, if you get a little out of rhythm, people don't care.
Yeah.
I
It's not
mean,
a, yeah.
I'll say this in the most loving way, but Colin Mockery does it on television in front of millions of
I was just
people.
thinking that. Yeah. He cannot sing to save his life, but he's a great musical improviser, right?
Exactly, exactly.
He speaks most of his lines, although I've heard him sing too. And I was like impressed. Oh, he can sing.
Yeah.
Um, as he and Brad Sherwood tour with that two-man group. I saw them live in St. Louis. I remember he did a couple things where he was actually singing, carrying a note. I went, oh, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
good for you, Colin.
Oh
Um,
God.
and so that's cool. Let's again the segue into so you got this new course again. So tell people again a little bit about it, where they can find out about it. And it's part one, as I understand it. So there'll be a series of these, there'll be different levels of these courses that you'll be putting out. You've got the first
Yeah,
step
I
page.
think there'll just be two, but maybe there'll be
Oh,
three.
okay.
Um,
Part one is out now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's called The Musician's Guide to Improv Comedy. So it's from what I do, my side of it, right?
Right.
It's not about the singing part. I did have one person sign up who was like, "Oops," and I gave him a refund. But it
Right.
is for the musician's side. And it's an online course. Once you sign up, you have access to all the lessons for lifetime. You can go as fast as slow as you want. You can go back and review them. There's written materials to go with it. There's exercises. I play tons of examples. And so you can really see and hear what I'm doing. And it covers sort of all the basic elements of improv. The next one of musical improv, the next one, I'm going to go deep into genres. So that's partly why I wanted to do a part two, because
Okay.
that's a whole nother level of stuff. And so my website is laurahall.com. You can go there, and there's a link there that'll take you to Teachable, and you can watch a video. It explains it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um,
And the page looks really great. It's well designed, and you got it really set up in a
thank you very much.
professional looking way, if I won't say
Thank
so.
you very much.
Uh,
I've got my friend and a very talented young woman is helping me with it, Kenzie Slato, and she did a fantastic job with all of that.
Cool, cool. And then while they're on your website, they can also get on your email list and stay updated on your activities. And when you, Rick, do get back on the road, that's probably a great way to learn about that, right?
Exactly. So I've got my calendar on there, but yeah, if you get on the email list, then that's the easy way to get. I don't send a million emails, a couple a month.
Yeah, yeah. It's I'm on it, and it's always yeah. You don't get bombarded, but it's always a welcome addition to my inbox. um,
Thank you.
let's see here. Oh, Aunt Janet asks, "How's Rick doing?" And the girls. It's more of a family thing, but
They're they're all good. They're all good.
good.
The girls are both working, and they're grown-ups now. They have a
Mhm.
life.
Uh, th- this might be a final question. Larry Jones here is also on our Compass board. He says, "Do you have the most embarrassing moment on stage of doing improv?" I guess.
Well, there's the one that is sort of most famous, which was the one where I accidentally made the music speed up on that one song on Whose Line when we were doing the Village People thing. And that's the one, of course, that's the thing that people remember me the most by is
Is,
like, here's
is it
when you really screwed up.
because
And
it's seen by millions of people, I'm sure, and it's on
yeah,
YouTube now too.
exactly. So, and it was funny. I mean, when I watched it, watching the guy's expressions was really funny. And oh, I have to. Something just popped up. There we go. And but it was totally an accident, and I was so embarrassed at the time. And it was just there was a little button on my keyboard that says ACC, which stands for accelerate. I had no idea. I accidentally bumped it while I was playing, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know how to stop it. I had to literally turn the keyboard off.
That's
Stop
yeah,
it.
and it's a classic because yeah, if you watch, if you find it on YouTube, yeah, it keeps speeding up, and Drew is just like cracking up, right? And like he asked me what happened there, and he just like couldn't stop laughing. Um,
Yeah, and what did Greg said something like, "Man, after that bridge, it really takes off." They were just so funny,
yeah,
and watching them try to dance because they were dancing, and then it's going faster and faster. It really was funny, but also super embarrassing. I'm not really a techie,
yeah.
and so that's where it shows.
That's funny. Well, classic moment. Well, thank you so much for sharing this time with us. And yeah, I'm so thrilled that that you have been a part, well, not part of my and many people's sort of improv awakening, if you would say, through your work on Whose Line, which I know is only, it's the most public thing, but I know, as I said in the beginning, it's just the tip of the iceberg of all the things that you've done. We didn't even talk about you scoring films, and you talk about working on a musical, so you've got a lot of creative things going on. But it's a thrill to know you, Laura, and thank you for taking the time to share your story with us here.
Uh,
And I. Though I don't have any currently any. There will be more interviews coming, and this will be posted like our previous interviews on the Compass Improv YouTube channel, where you can find. We've done 6 prior to you, Laura, and I know you know most of these people: Bill Cott, Liz Allen, Ed Reggie, B.J. Lang, Cooper Shaw, and Tara DeFrancisco were the first 6 people. You know, I think almost all of them.
yeah, yeah.
And those are already on the YouTube channel, and we'll be putting Laura's interview up there. So if you want to go back and check some of the previous ones that we've done. But again, go to laurahall.com for all things Laura Hall related. Get on the email list. Check out the book. Check out the course if that speaks to you. And Laura, any final words before we sign off here?
Well, I want to say thank you. And also, I do have to say it's one of the things I'm really proud of about Whose Line is that I feel like it has inspired a lot of people
Yeah.
to try improv, to take a class, to see what it's like. And that makes me really happy. Like if that the show has inspired people creatively, fantastic.
It did me. So yeah. So thank you for that work. And all right. Thanks, Laura. Thank you for
Thanks
watching.
for
We'll be
having me.
all right. You have a good night, and we'll be back again soon with another interview with another awesome improv person. All right. So long for now, folks. Bye.
Bye.